He has caused carnage this morning. She's been throwing things. It's just, come on, rein it in, will you?
Sorry, I will control myself.
Rein it in.
This first story we're beginning with is extraordinary. This news broke yesterday afternoon. And it's one, I think they were saying, there was going to be manhunt into the night and possibly be captured. Hasn't happened yet. So this is the hunt for a terror suspect who escaped Wandsworth Prison yesterday by clinging to the underside of a food delivery van wearing a chef's uniform. So it's interesting that this information was released pretty quickly. Obviously, police need people to be vigilant and pass on any information.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a terror suspect on the run, so I think a lot of people will look at this story and feel extremely worried, although the police have said, thankfully, there's no reason to think that he's going to be a direct threat to other people, but they really need to know where he is. I think this raises a huge number of questions for the government, though. One is, how on earth was he able to escape clinging to the underside of a van? There's meant to be a huge number of security checks on vehicles going in and out of prisons, because that is a known vulnerable point. And the fact that this is a guy who's he's on remand, he's a terror suspect, and he had a job working in the kitchen where there are vehicles coming in and out, I think that raises massive questions. We know he was at Wandsworth Prison, and actually Wandsworth Prison is one of the prisons which has had massive issues with staffing. On a typical day, between 30 to 40% of staff will be off sick. We've been hearing on news reports this morning. Morale is very low. So I think there are real questions for the government. What's going on in our prison system? We've got an underfunded prison service, I think. And things like this, very dangerous, risky things, are going to happen if you don't make sure that prisons are properly staffed and prisoners are in a prison of the right level of security for them.
It sounds like it was fairly well planned, Nick. A massive manhunt. What's that look like?
Well, it's farcical, isn't it? And as one of my callers said today, how do they know that's how he got out? By clinging to the underside of the van?
That's such a good point.
Which actually I couldn't, and I still can't answer unless they have video footage. But it's a very good point made by my caller. Look, what we've got on our hands here, and I don't want to say this, but the government actually are quite fortunate because prison officers are not allowed to strike. Like police officers as well. And back to Sonia's point, morale is so low. I understand there is a staffing crisis. I've been speaking with prison officers who work in Wandsworth, who work in Belmarsh, who work in jails up and down the country. It's not a happy job at the moment. In Wandsworth, the local MP, Labour's Rosanna Allen Khan, pointed out that at one night at Wandsworth recently, only 7 prison officers reported for duty. Now, they made up the number because they got people in, but that took them to 13 officers to look after 1,300 inmates through the night.
I mean,
so they have real... I know,
duty.
really. So they have major staffing issues, but something has gone wrong here. There's meant to be what's called effectively an airlock. So the vehicle comes in, the door closes behind it, the door closes in front of it, the deliveries are made. Clearly no one was supervising the deliveries. And what is a man who, admittedly, he's a suspect, we need to say that, and it is terror on the grounds of reportedly, or allegedly, I should say, making hoax bombs and possibly disclosing MOD confidential information. He should have been in a Category A jail, such as Belmarsh. Why was he in Wandsworth? Why was he working in the kitchens, as Sonia said?
Well, I mean, extra security checks at airports and ports, long delays yesterday. Authorities believe he may be attempting to lose the country. He is low risk, the police have said. The police have said, please do not approach him, but call 999 instead. Here is his photo, Daniel Khalif. Let's move on to another story now. Tomorrow marks 1 year since the death of Queen Elizabeth, and it also marks a whole year of King Charles's reign. Obviously, the moment that the Queen passed, the throne immediately passes without ceremony to Charles. People talking about this last year and how successful his reign has been, actually how hard-working he's been.
Absolutely. I mean, it's hard to believe it's been a year, really, isn't it? But I think there were a lot of sort of question marks about Charles kind of, say 10 years ago, about what kind of monarch he was going to be. Was he going to be as good a steward for the monarchy as his mother undoubtedly was in her, decades of public service? But actually, I think that, the way he handled kind of his mother, passing, and the way that he's handled the first year of being king and his duties, I think a lot of people think, actually, he's a very worthy successor to his mother.
It's been quite subtle post-coronation, hasn't it, Nick? I mean, he's there, but it's quite subtly done. Yeah.
I think, Craig, I think that was all part of the plan to make it as subtle as it can. Look, I think it's been actually a complete success story. And never mind what I think, there's recently a poll, and it's published in one of the newspapers today, the Daily Mail. More than 60% of people say that the King is doing a good job. Now, that's, I have to say the number was higher under his late mum, but that's not a bad starting figure. No. I think he's made some positive steps. He's looking to try and trim the monarchy. We know that that's caused a degree, or reportedly caused a degree of tension with one of his brothers, Andrew, and others. But I do think in these times, if he's aware of and he can start to trim the monarchy a little bit and kind of make it right for the next generation, then I think that my children, your children, everyone can sign up to it, because I see it as a key part of the British way of life. So I would say absolutely A, if not A+.
Yeah, good year.
Poor old Prince Harry, desperate to be an A+, back in the UK, for good reason too. He's over with his Well Child Awards. Invictus Games, they start this weekend as well. So it's almost the start of a new era for Harry as well, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the press are obviously looking at it through the lens of the relationship between William and Harry. And, you know, they're sort of reporting he's back for one night only. Apparently, he's not going to be seeing his dad, the King. Apparently, he and William haven't spoken since the publication of Spare, when he talked, you know, about some very personal things that happened between him and his brother. But I just sort of feel that this is a family that's been through so much trauma that other families will be able to identify with. I mean, these are two men who lost their mum when they were so young, and that is an extremely difficult thing to cope with. It's a hard thing for families to process. It has an impact on lots of families in terms of relationships, etc. And it just feels a bit mawkish to still be talking about the relationship between Princes William and Harry and the fact that they're reportedly not talking. It's just like, you know, they've both been through too much. Can we not just move on?
Yeah,
is how I
just
feel.
let them. I mean, he's obviously over here for a very, very good reason,
Yes.
and this weekend's an even a hugely important weekend for him. Do you think we're getting to that stage now where things are moving on for them? Do you think there's sort of better will towards them?
Oh, I hope so. I hope so, Holly. I mean, look, should we be candid? I would imagine all of your viewers now, all of their families, they have had bust-ups. It's part of the family life. We have the most fantastic moments where we share all the joys, and then, of course, we have a few dramas. The problem here is, if you want me to be candid, in my view, things have been said on both sides, or indeed all sides. People have either said or done things that actually now they probably regret. I would argue, I think it's that great saying, time is a great healer. We now need there to be a passage of time where, and understandably, Sonia, of course this is going to make headlines, but in reality, we just need to get as much time as we can for all the main protagonists to sit, to calm, to realise they're only on this planet once, even though they're royals. Yeah. You only have one dad. You only have, in this case, a couple of sons. These are the people you should hold nearest and dearest. And while it may take a little bit of time to work through it all, ultimately, for the sake of the family, never mind the fact that they're the royal family, for the sake of any family, sometimes everyone has to swallow a bit of pride and just get back together. And that's what I would urge any family to do, because you only have one family.
Well said, Nick.
Agreed.
Well said, yeah, completely. Yeah, I don't know what you're saying. My family are absolutely perfect.
You're probably like in a minority of like 1% of the country or something.
There you go.
This next story, interesting one here. A review of veterinary services in the UK has been launched over concerns that pet owners could be paying too much. People are not getting value for their money. The cost of care has risen faster than inflation.
Yeah, well, this is one. So I don't have pets, but I've got lots of friends who do, and everyone dreads that moment, don't they, when they can feel that their much-loved dog or cat is getting sicker, and you go to the vet. And the thing is, people are so attached to their pets. They love them so much that when a vet says something needs to be done and quotes you a price, or, you know, this story says you sometimes don't know what kind of bill you're going to be presented with until the end. Of course you feel you have to stump up and pay. You do. Yeah. And, you know, my friend had a cat last year, and, you know, she was approaching the end of her life, but she could have some surgery that could have extended her life. I didn't know this until this happened to her, but pet insurance often only meets a certain cap. So they might meet, like, the first £4,000 of any operating costs, but
the rest is up to you.
The rest is up to you. And actually, as a cat owner, and you really love your cat, you can't really not do it. No. So, you know, I'm sure that lots of vets are very, very, you know, that they take a lot of caution in terms of what they advise and what they think is best for the pet. But I do think that some of these industries, like funerals, weddings, you know, pet care, stuff where it's very emotional for us as human beings. It's very difficult for you sometimes to know what the right financial thing to do is. So I think it's good that the Competition and Markets Authority have done this review and are stepping in and saying, you know, this is something we need to think about, because at the end of the day, having a pet is very, very expensive. It's a significant financial responsibility. Obviously not as much as having children, but it is a significant financial responsibility, and the cost of living is very high.
Also, and this sounds ridiculous as I say it, but Nick, they can't talk to you. So your only option is to go to a vet. You have to go to an expert. You have no choice.
Do you know, you're right, and because they can't talk, you probably actually give them more love and sympathy because you can't explain the situation. Now, you know that I'm a massive animal lover. I think I've told you in the past, Holly, that I've once delivered a donkey foal. I don't know if I have shared with you.
I don't know.
I didn't know that story. Wow.
I'm the only breakfast presenter.
We need to hear more about that.
No, it's true. I'm the only breakfast presenter on British radio that can shear a sheep, because my family kept sheep, we kept donkeys, and I've grew up with dogs and cats. I know the love that goes on between people and their pets.
Who are you, Nick Ferrari?
a man of few talents.
Sheep shearer and donkey delivering broadcasting legend. That's who you are.
I know a little about a lot. That's what I say. I know a little lot about a great. But listen, vets have to train for a very long time. Their drugs are very expensive to buy. But if people are being ripped off, and my heart now goes out, not to somebody like me. I don't actually. My sons have 4 dogs between them, so they are real dog lovers. I don't actually have a dog myself, but I see the others a lot. But my heart goes out to think of now, perhaps one of your viewers, Craig and Holly, who perhaps an elderly person who's absolutely devoted to their cat or their dog. They effectively their life because the grandchildren are away, or the guy who has the dog perhaps as a guide dog. If there is something unscrupulous going on for those people, those are the sort of people who do need protection, because they should not be being ripped off. That is wholly and utterly unfair. So it won't do any harm to have a look at these costs.
Yeah, agreed.
Thanks, Nick.